policies that you put into play are going to contribute to you either winning or losing the game, right? So policy coordination is critical for the overall strategic concept. And this is where the function of the National Security Council comes into play. It's the National Security Council that is charged with the function of coordinating these policies, right? So that, okay, we know who's doing what, we know what policy affects what, we know what policy impact affects what agency, and so on, right? So the National Security Council, C-O-U-N-S-I-L, the National Security Council is charged with this coordination. And here's the quote. The Council also serves as the President's principal arm for coordinating these policies among various government agencies, what I just said. These agencies need to have their policies coordinated. Just like little Tommy needs to get his cleats in order, and he has to get his soccer shin guards, and he's got to get his shorts, and he's got to get his Gatorade. Similarly, we need to make sure that the policies for various agencies are in order. One, because those policies are going to help define the function, the purpose, the strategy, and on and on and on and on and on, right? We all know that. Sort of, hopefully I hope that's obvious, right? The next thing to recognize about the National Security Council is, quote, the principal committee, right? The principal committee will be the, and this is what's important, senior interagency forum. The principal committee is the senior interagency forum. This forum devoted obviously to interagency discourse and discussion, right? The forum, discussion, interagency, obvious. So as we've seen, this is important. This notion of interagency is extremely important. And insofar as we're talking about the coordination of interagencies, we recognize that the coordination is rooted in policy. I took it even a step further by putting it in the human body, which was, that's really, really deep. But as far as the National Security Council, the National Security Council sort of manages the coordination of this myriad group of agencies through policy coordination. So the principal committee will be the senior interagency forum for consideration of policy issues affecting national security, while the deputy committee will review and monitor the work of the National Security Council interagency process. Right? So you can see that this is great oversight. So we have the National Security Council, right, who is charged with orchestrating the policy, interagency policy. But then we have the deputies committee, which is responsible for reviewing and monitoring the work of the National Security Council's process. Right? So we have like double oversight, which is perfect. Right? I mean, it's like you have what do you call those people? A CPA, and then you have an auditor, right? And then I would imagine you have an auditor of an auditor, right? It's just the more oversight you have, the better. And shall be responsible for the day-to-day crisis management. Now, here is what I think is a key, so that should be clear. Here's what I think is a key weakness in this discourse on coordination. I think this is we're almost finished. Here's what I think is a key weakness. And I got this from the same document. You can click the link. So let's read it. Key weakness. Today's international terrorist threat can encompass not only physical attacks on U.S. physical structures, such as the World Trade Center, but also cyber attacks, right? Cyber terrorism is an important aspect of terrorism. I'm not going to discuss cyber terrorism at all in this series, because I think in order to do a really good discussion of cyber terrorism, you should be a programmer. And I know code a bit, but I'm no expert in code and encryption technology and all that other stuff to really truly give a good account of cyber terrorism. But we all have an idea of what cyber terrorism is. So I'll begin again. This is what I think is a key weakness. Today's international terrorist threat can encompass not only physical attacks on U.S. physical structures such as the World Trade Center, but also cyber attacks on critical infrastructures. The computerized, and here's what's important, the computerized communications and data storage systems on which U.S. society has become reliant. We recognize now that based on the three forms of attack, direct attack, indirect attack, and exploitation of infrastructure, this is making reference to a direct attack. It's not saying that, but that's what's being stated, right? Not only blah 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 structures in situ U.S., which would be a form of indirect attack, but also cyber attack critical infrastructures and computerized communications and data storage systems on which the U.S. system has become reliant. Since these systems are in most cases owned by corporations and other commercial entities, the role of the National Security Council is necessarily constrained. This is a huge weakness, people. So, I don't know the powers that be, we need to get on that. That's a huge, 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 huge weakness. Let me explain it so that you understand. Remember we talked about the 3 types of attacks in a previous installment of the videos. I'm not going to talk about the third. The first is a direct attack, a direct infrastructural attack. The next is an indirect infrastructural attack. And the last is what's known as an exploitation, infrastructural exploitation, the exploitation of an infrastructure. We're not going to talk about the third. Okay, the World Trade Center, arguably indirect. World Trade Center. The center was attacked not because it was just the destruction of the towers. Nobody thought the towers would fall, I don't think. But they recognized that insofar as I attack the infrastructure, I'm attacking the financial hub. And the economy got brutalized, right? Because, in a sense, of the attack, the economy was brutalized. A lot of stuff happened. We've showed economic resilience. And I have a strong feeling that we'll get all the budget discussion sort of worked out and we'll bounce back. But it wasn't the destruction of the building itself that was important. An indirect attack. A direct attack is what's being talked about in this cyber terrorism, right? So imagine, again, to go back to the example that I gave before, that we have a water hub. So a sanitation hub. And the sanitation hub provides water to local communities. Clean drinking water to local communities. This local water hub is owned by corporation, C-O-R-P-O-R-A, is owned by Corporation A. Corporation A is a private corporation, or even if it's public, it doesn't matter if it's public or private, it's a corporation, right? Non-governmental corporation, right? Shareholders, profit margins, blah, 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 right? Here we have citizens. So here's the dilemma. Here we have citizens, right? Community of citizens, C-I-T-I-Z-E-N-S. Now, I'm going to read this last bit again so you truly get the difficulty of the problem. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, the computerized communication and data storage system on which the U.S. society has become reliant, since such systems are in most cases owned and operated by corporations and other commercial entities, the role of the National Security Council is necessarily constrained, much dependent on law enforcement as well as voluntary cooperation by the private sector. Red flag, pass some new legislation, you know, call it what you want. Call it what you want. You know, the big distinction between, and this is just gross, and I'm a little off topic with this, but the big distinction between, gross distinction between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans want less government, Democrats want more government. And that's not fair to Democrats or Republicans either, because they're both false. I don't see how anyone could argue that you wouldn't need more government in this example. This is clearly an example where no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you need more government, right? Because this is a huge, gaping cesspool of weakness. It is. You obviously need more government. You mean to tell me that this H2O cleaning factory, and this is just an example, right? I don't know the semantics of it all, but you get the idea. Let's just say H2O cleaning facility is owned by a private individual, private company. And that company is responsible for providing clean drinking water to 250,000 citizens. The government doesn't give two craps about the corporation, for our examples here, but it definitely cares about the citizenry. If terrorists here use their cyber technology to compromise the H2O facility that is owned by a corporation, and now this facility is pumping out dirty water, and cholera outbreaks start to happen, and E. coli outbreaks start to happen, and public health administrators are freaking out because, you know, vast segments of the population are dying from cholera and freaking E. coli, which is like unheard of, right? And the government recognizes, whoa, it might be, I wonder if this technology has been compromised, because all of this is run by computers. You know, how does the government intervene in the corporation's private business matters? Right? How does it do it? It's not that easy. I'm not a lawyer, but I can imagine it's going to be a hell of a process to do that. So, bigwigs, let's fix the let's fix that weakness, because it's a huge weakness, right? And you know, in some sense, I don't, giving these lectures publicly, and I know it's all public information. I don't know how I feel. So yeah, enough of that. So let's fix that and make it a bit stronger. So lastly, number five, facilitate interagency access to what are known as knowledge banks. And I'm going to read this. Sharing that information. The National Counterterrorism Center, the NCTC, serves as the United States government's central and shared knowledge bank of known and suspected terrorists and international terror groups. So that there is this knowledge bank. This knowledge bank does exist, where this information is shared, and is specifically shared interdepartmentally, interagency-wide, and it's the National Counterterrorism Center. The NCTC collects more than 30 intelligence, military, law enforcement, and homeland security networks under one roof to facilitate robust is always a good word, right? To facilitate robust information sharing. And NCTC is a model of interagency information sharing. So again, the whole point of my now 2-hour lecture on attaining this strategy, right, to be able to say that we as a nation have arrived at strategic strengthening of our homeland security, is to say that we can't properly talk about strategically arriving at that strength unless we recognize that the strategy has to be interagency cooperation and coordination, right? There has to be an interagency cooperation. There has to be interagency coordination. I've gone so far as to put the interagency coordination in the body of the particular agent, and I talked about how conceptually that could be done. But then also the function of the National Security Council and its coordination of policy, and the National Counterterrorism Center and the coordination of information. All of these things help facilitate. And again, I think, and I want to close on this point, I think that if we look at the analogy of Verizon and AT&T's coverage of, you know, the United States telecommunication, and we use that as an example of the coverage that we need with respect to counterterrorism, then anywhere there isn't cell phone coverage, that black spot becomes problematic for phone providers. Anywhere there isn't coverage with respect to intel, with respect to people, with respect to resources, with respect to, you fill in the blank, with respect primarily to interagency coordination of info, then those black spots are going to be obvious places where people will try to take root and establish insurgencies, right? It's just obvious. It's just obvious. So with that, I think this is the first time I've erased the board before I've dismissed, like this is class. Dismiss the class, you're now dismissed. Yeah, anyway, so thanks for watching my videos. I will continue the discussion on national security and homeland security affairs. With that, I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.